All right, get ready, everybody. Get your journals out because we are in the cloud forest today and we're going to nature journal some cool stuff that I have right here, including some amazing insects that showed up last night. I also set up this arrangement of mosses and other epiphytes so that we can draw that. So get your journals out and get ready. Also, by the way, there might be a lot of background noise because there's a raging river right behind me that I'm going to show you in a minute. So if you have to, just turn your audio down. It's not that important what I say. You can follow along with the visuals. Also, there could be cool cloud forest birds dropping in here in the background. So be ready for that. I got my binoculars. I got some stuff right here to share with you. So get your sketching supplies out and let's get started. I see that James is here. I know it's early in the morning for a lot of people, but I wanted to do this special live to help show you some of the cool biodiversity that there is here in the cloud forests of Ecuador. This is the Choco Andino, one of the most biodiverse and most endangered, unique ecosystems in the entire world. So let's get started with some moths, actually. So there are still some moths here. Maybe I'll just give you a little brief tour here. Here is the setup that we can draw from later. I found all of these got knocked off during the storm last night. So these are the kinds of things that you would typically see in the cloud forest when you're out walking around. This is set up outside of the cabin that I am renting. But I picked these so that we can look at them here. Here you've got bromeliads, pineapple family. Here you've got orchids, the orchid family. And here you've got ferns in a whole taxa of their own. And all of these things, plus these mosses, I think there might be some liverworts on here as well, and some lichens. These are all the classic things that you're going to see growing as epiphytes in the tropical cloud forest. So these are the kinds of things that make the cloud forest unique, and they can be super fun, but also super challenging to draw. And right here, you can see one of the moths from last night walking there on that branch. So, in addition to this botanical study that we can look at and draw, I can give you some tips for how to draw bromeliads and mosses. These are very complex subjects. In addition to that, we do have some of these moths left over from last night. Like, check out this giant sphinx moth right here. Isn't that amazing? So I had my UV light set up. Wow, look at that teeny little one is really beautiful too. Might have to put the close focus on um, the macro lens on for some of these. So during the day, these things are usually resting. And what we can do is just easily move them into a location where we can draw them more easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this beautiful, beautiful moth. It looks like it might be close to the end of its life already. Look at how its wings are quite worn. I'm going to try to gently put it onto this table next to these beetles, and we'll be able to nature journal this moth in a moment. It's okay. There you go. So that's a really cool one. We definitely want to look at that one. Here's another sphinx type moth, and I'm going to pick this one up as well. It's okay. Come here. It's okay. Wow. I wonder if that was a defensive display. Did you see the colors underneath and how it flipped on its? Wow, that's amazing. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Wow, I never seen them do that before. That might actually be a defensive um, mechanism to help birds not eat it. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. If it doesn't calm down, I'm going to just leave it here. Wow, that one does not want to get messed with. I'm going to leave it. Okay, we're not going to do that one. What about this leaf-like one? There's also these ones that look just like leaves as part of their defense strategy. So let's pick up one of those. This one's a little bit of a tattered leaf. Oh no! Oh, and there goes our sphinx moth. We should have drawn it sooner. Okay, well, this worked yesterday, but maybe it won't work today. Look at that one. What we might have to do is just come nature journal them right here where they are right now. Isn't that one's really cool? Maybe we'll pick up some of these ones that are looking more damaged. This was completely covered in bugs last night. So just put a few here. We'll draw those in a minute, but let me just show you the river out back. And if the noise isn't too distracting, we could do a landscape drawing from over here. Look at how amazing this view is. And that's the river right there. I went swimming in it yesterday and it was really calm. And now it's a raging torrent, even though it has calmed down a little bit since last night. So that's a little perspective. All right, let's get one more moth and then let's start nature journaling. If you're following along at home, you could already be sketching some of this while I get set up. Oh, that one's not gonna, oh, it landed on our plant setup there. Okay, let's get one more. Maybe one of these sphinx will actually be a little bit more cooperative. I'm gonna do that flipping thing. It's not flipping. Oh, it is flipping. Look at that. I never knew that about these before. Did you see it had that pink color underneath? Okay, come here. Wow, it poked me too. I don't know if it bit me or if it was its tibial spurs that poked me. Interesting defense mechanisms. Okay, we've got enough things here to start with. This Sphinx is absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe that display, that defense display. I'm assuming it's a defense display. If I were a bird or a curious mammal, that could definitely scare me away. I bet that thing doesn't taste very good anyways. And it poked me. Hopefully, I don't know if any moths being venomous, but we'll find out soon enough. And that was really, really cool. Beautiful colors underneath. And it looks like it might stay there long enough for us to nature journal it. Also, a pro tip, if you're nature journaling from a live stream like this, you can always take a screenshot. And that's what I do during classes, for example, where I want to have more time with an image. So since it's a live stream, you can just take a screenshot, keep that on one side of your screen and draw from that in case we move a little bit further away or the perspective changes. Hi to everyone who's just turning in for the first time. I see Cindy's here and Candy. Here you can see this botanical display that I've set up that we're going to be able to draw in a minute. Look at the beautiful view outside from my cabin. It's sunny and clear now, but it was quite stormy yesterday. This is a little setup that I created, like a diorama to kind of give the feel for the cloud forest epiphytic ecosystem. There's so much going on every single branch and even every single leaf. Oh, mosquito just bit me on the forehead. And we're going to nature journal. We're going to try to nature journal as many of these things, plus some of these moths and maybe that landscape. So let me set this phone up in the tripod here. It's like the mosquitoes are showing up to bite me. Don't worry, you won't have to worry about that part at home. So just pretend like you are on an adventure with me in the cloud forest. And sorry about the sound. There's a raging river in the background. If you need to, just lower the volume or mute. I won't be offended. And just follow along visually. I'll try to set these up in a place where you can see the moths still. But like I said, the screenshot when we're up close is the way to go. Oh, here comes the wind. Hopefully it won't blow everything away. So the screenshot is your best bet. I'll get you close again in a minute, but I need to get some nature journaling going on my page here. All right, so get my sketchbook out. Here you can see some moths that I did yesterday. I think that was yesterday. Some birds, lots of ridiculously colored birds here in the cloud forest. I doubt any of them will come close enough for you to see. It looks like there's some flame-rumped tanagers down there right now, but a little bit too far away for you to see. And this wind is picking up, so I'm gonna start drawing these moths right away. I saw a quetzal fly right past here yesterday. Lots of amazing tanagers. Here's the landscape I did at the river before it got completely raging and muddy. I could hear the giant boulders shifting around last night. They kept waking me up, the sound of the boulders. Okay, so let's start with a warm up. And what we're going to do is we're going to just draw some basic moth shapes. Let me get you close again one more time. And like I said, take a screenshot if you can. Oh. So, for example, if you want just the straight on view, this would be a good time to do your screenshot. I might try holding the camera here at some point later on so you can get this, but just take a screenshot right now if you want to draw one of these moths. There's also a longhorn beetle here, Cerambicidae family, I'm assuming. A little bit harder to focus in on that one. And there's this smaller moth, looks like might be kind of dead. And then there is this other beetle, not showing up that great either. So let's start with just some basic sketches of those. If you need more references, check out my Instagram stories, and I've posted a lot of moth photos on there recently, or you can find me on iNaturalist. I've been logging almost all my moth observations on there. And I'm at Marley Peifer on both of those platforms. Okay, so I'm going to do some quick moth sketches here now, just to get me warmed up. My pen looks really dry, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Oh, here comes another mosquito to visit. Sorry. Got it. Not personal. Okay, so just starting with some basic sketches. Remember, sometimes it's easy to forget to warm up for drawing, even though people warm up for sports and even singing. I even try to warm up my voice a little bit before going live. Oh, some big bird just flew over. But why don't we warm up for drawing? Almost never. One way you can do this is to use a separate piece of paper or make smaller drawings that you're not as worried about. You could use a separate piece of paper and do dedicated warm-ups. You could do blind contour drawings like we've done a lot on the show. I think I did a whole episode on nature journaling warm-ups that you could check out. And okay, so you can see I'm just doing these sort of loose, quick sketches of the basic bug shapes. Sometimes your metadata can be a sort of warm-up. Okay. All right, and now just that one beetle. I'll get you in close here in a second. For those of you who want to see a even closer up, what we're gonna do, and you've probably seen me recommend this before. I don't have the link right now, but this is the Zenvo clip-on macro lens. I think they're like $20. It's one of the essentials in my nature journaling kit. I'm gonna clip this on to my phone, which I'm live streaming from, and you'll be able to see these bugs up close. So let's try that. Get ready to screenshot. If you don't know how to screenshot on your device, just Google it. It's a very useful thing to know how to do. And there we go. So you could probably go crazy trying to get the details on a moth like this, but what I would recommend is probably doing that in a separate drawing. So we did our drawing where we got the basic shape, but these surface details will sometimes take away from the feeling of the shape and the volume of the thing that you're drawing. So surface details often go against the illusion of depth and the illusion of three-dimensionality that we're trying to get in a drawing. Let's get this beetle because that one wasn't showing up very well. So if you want to draw the beetle, now is your chance to get a screenshot. And here's that one other yellow moth. While we're at it, let's go ahead and get a few more for those of you who want some better references. And then we'll do a little bit more bug drawing and then we'll move on to the plants. So I'm going to take this off so you don't get dizzy. But let's see, what would be a good, this is actually one of the coolest right here. This one is amazing. iPhone's not great at close up. So here, let me put the macro lens on. Don't get dizzy while I do this. Yeah, let's see if I can get this for you because this moth is absolutely amazing. Whoa, the wind's coming. No. All right, so if you can, try to get a screenshot of that. Sorry, this is kind of crazy. This is an experiment. I've never done a live stream quite this crazy before. But look at that thing. You might want to take a screenshot. This would be really fun to paint with watercolor or acrylic. It's sort of backlit right now, so you can't see the colors that great. Let me see if I can improve the lighting a little bit there. Okay, now let's look at one or two more bugs here. Here we go. Here's one other really, really interesting moth. Let's see if it will let me. This is hard because I can't even look at the camera to tell if it's in focus. I have to look way back at the computer. Okay, so screenshot that. And at this point, you should have quite a few things to work on. Let's get this one other moth here. This one's really cool. Look at that thing. The lighting's a little bit weird. So look at this setup that I'm trying to hear. My moth lights blowing in the wind. Got my computer way back there. And my little zone here for drawing and nature journaling. We're going to work on those plants next. And if you all want, we can do a landscape at the end from the balcony. Let's just go check that out just in case people haven't seen that yet. There's more bird species in this town, this one little town in Ecuador, than there are in all of US, Canada, and Mexico combined. Pretty nice, huh? And it's actually super cheap to rent this little cabin. So I'm trying to do a bunch of videos. I'm making a new Skillshare class, doing a bunch of stuff for my Patreon, doing a bunch of work while I'm here. In addition to nature journaling, documenting biodiversity, I've documented dozens of moth species on my iNaturalist already. And I'm going to be teaching nature journaling here at this big birding festival that's coming up next week. The biggest birding festival in all of South America. Hi, Marina. I'm glad it looks cool. I hope you got some screenshots in there, folks. If not, there's a way that you can go somewhere down here on your screen. Maybe it's down on this side of your screen. You can control the speed of the videos and you can rewind. So if you need to, you can rewind to one of the spots where I showed the bugs up close, take a screenshot, then you can catch up with where I'm at in the video or talking if you want to, and the live chat. You can catch up with that, and then you can draw from the screenshot. Hopefully the audio from the waterfall and the river is not too bad in the background. I was worried about that, especially since it rained so much more last night. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've got these basic sketches, right? Now I'm going to do a more detailed drawing and some notes about that Sphinx moth, because that that display it did and getting poked by it was something I was not expecting. So when things happen that you're not expecting, that's a really important thing for you to try to capture in your nature journal. And I thought this had better ink flow on this pen, but I'm having issues with my pens. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to draw it straight on. I tried to give you a visual of it straight on because they can be a lot harder in perspective. And since it's an animal with bilateral symmetry, if you wanted to, you could just draw one side of it. Let's see if I can get you a little bit closer. I'm going to set this up so you can see my drawing more close up. I think I can do that. My tripod broke yesterday. Go down. There we go. Okay, so there you should be able to see the moths and a little bit. And remember, if you go back a little bit in the video, you will be able to find the close-ups of these moths if you want to draw from those or take a screenshot. So now I'm a little bit closer. My head is sort of just right above this. And I'm going to try to get a little bit bigger of a drawing here and not in perspective. I'm actually going to do something I usually don't do, and I'm actually even going to pencil this in a little bit. Look, I even bought a pencil. And I really want to get this triangular shape. For Sphinx moths, this is super characteristic um, of their look. So I want to get that right. And then it sweeps back from there. But in general, there's this big triangular shape, including the head. Then the main body is basically just like this weird wedge. So I'm going to exaggerate that and just make it go straight back into a point. And then these do sweep back at the tips, but without losing that triangle. If you freehand draw this, it's really easy to lose that triangular shape. The crazy thing is if you get this part right, it almost doesn't matter what else you do. It's going to be really hard to ruin it, and it will look like a Sphinx moth. The basic body plan is the most important thing. And I'm going to draw the head a little bit in perspective so I can show the eyes. And then the legs stick straight out in front, and I can do all of that later. But just to show you, see how I got that basic triangular shape in there? And this wing I'm now noticing is way bigger than the other one, so I'm going to change that. And especially if it were in perspective. And that's something that normally when I go straight to ink, I wouldn't have been able to do. Now, I'm not going to get too fussy about this. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. No bugs fell in there yet, I don't think. Glitter pool party is here. Good morning to you too. Okay, so now I'm going to go straight to this ink here. Oh yeah, this one is the one that's flowing. I hear the wren in the background. I believe it's just a house wren. Hear that? Might not be able to hear it because of all the waterfall noise. And get that in there. And that wren is going to come and try to eat my moths. Viciously snap them into pieces. So I know the wing folds up here in this zone because that's where it had those crazy pink colors. Remember when it did that defensive display, or what I'm assuming is a defensive display. A lot of bugs have a lot of tropical bugs have what's called a surprise display. And so they might be cryptic on the outside. Cryptic just means camouflaged or blending in. Uh-oh, here comes the wind. Hopefully it doesn't blow these moths away. They might be cryptic on the outside and in most places, but then um, if they need to, they can flash bright colors or maybe eyes. They might have something that looks like eyes that they can flash and scare things away. And that's exactly what this moth has. It's very cryptic, almost leaf-like, dead leaf-like on the outside. But then, like you saw, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that video in slow motion. But as you saw when I was trying to pick it up, it was flipping over. Oh, what's that? I see a bird. Okay, there's some small flycatcher. It could be a toddy flycatcher, or is it a gnat catcher? You should see the bird book for Ecuador. It's so huge. You could do weightlifting with it. It might be a vireo. Hopefully, it's not a lifer. And unfortunately, I don't have a way to show you the birds that are moving by because they're a little bit too far, and that would require some really special technology to live stream some of that type of action. But let's get back to the moths. They're equally cool, and then we'll do our plants, like I was saying. Okay, now I'm going to capture these dark areas. Remember, if you don't want to listen to the waterfall noise, just mute the audio or turn it way down and just follow along or skip around or pause the video and try to actually nature journal. Try to actually draw from what I'm showing you. Now I'm going to use the gray side for some of these fainter patterns here. Next summer, I'm going to be leading a nature journaling trip to Ecuador, and it's going to be awesome. There's only 10 spots. They're going to fill up really fast, and people need to sign up before December 1st to reserve their spot. But we're going to start up at high altitudes near Quito, Ecuador, about 8,000 feet, where there's Andean condors. There's a Paramo ecosystem. It's basically like a high altitude grassland. Some amazing hummingbirds, including the largest hummingbird species in the world. You won't believe it when you see it. It looks like a swift. You won't even think it's a hummingbird. Hummingbirds and swifts are actually closely related, in fact. We'll see lots of other cool stuff up there. Do landscape paintings in our nature journal showing the volcanoes surrounding Quito. Then we're going to go little by little through the cloud forest all the way down to the Amazon. And we're going to stay at a lodge in the Amazon for a couple days where we can see pink Amazon river dolphins. You probably already know that there are freshwater dolphins in the world in some of the world's major rivers. Several of them have already gone extinct. There are some, I think it's the ones in China, in one of the giant rivers in China that have gone extinct. There's also some in India, and then there's some in the Amazon. And we're gonna try to see them. It's pretty likely, but no guarantees, right? There's also giant Amazonian river otters that we would nature journal there. And then we're going to be at all of these different elevations in between the Andes and the Amazon. It's called Andes to Amazon. It's a nature journaling adventure next year, first 10 days of July in the summer. It's going to be really awesome. And some of the stuff that, like some of these insects that I'm nature journaling here in the cloud forest, we're going to see some of the same stuff. We're going to set up lights at night. We're going to be with a professional entomologist, who's actually she's the tour agent that I'm organizing the trip with. She's super cool, creating a really cool itinerary, and that trip's going to be next summer, and I'm super excited about it. Okay, I'm going to get these red marks Here, I feel a sense of urgency because this wind is picking up. Okay, let me show you where I'm at right now. Oh, that is so cool. Ooh, I would love to see those giant salamanders. Oh, you don't hear the waterfall. Okay, cool. James, I would love to see those. Those sound really, really cool. And this sounds really cool also. So a lot of you who are attending the live right now are also Patreon members. Some of you are at different tiers than others. There are there are ways to see some of my Patreon content for free, and I am going to start making more free content on there. I am going to start using Patreon a lot more. They just did a lot of improvements on how it works, including an app that works really well and a lot of new features that allow for people in the community to post, share things that they're doing. So I'm really excited about that, especially because a lot of social media is having a lot of issues lately. And we often follow people because we like what they're doing, but then the algorithms don't necessarily show us the stuff of the people we're following. The algorithms often show us just trending things and often really weird stuff that might be like very shallowly entertaining in some very unsophisticated way, not to be elitist, but I think that the direction that social media is going in is very problematic, and Patreon allows people to follow the artists, creators, thinkers, philosophers, singers, what have you, the creators that they like, and actually be more connected to them and actually see what they're doing in a way that's free of ads. It's free of all of this sensationalism and all the craziness that tends to float to the top in social media. So if you haven't already, check out my Patreon. Even if you can't pay $5 a month, you can still see some of the content that I make on there, and if you just go to patreon.com/Marley Peifer, you can find me. I'll put a little banner up here. Okay, so here's where we're at right now with that moth. I'm feeling pretty good about that. And I do want to make sure I get some notes in here about it. So I have to think about where that's going to go. Some questions. I'm really curious about that whole defense. What I'm assuming is a defense strategy that it had. And I'll get to all of that in a second. It might be time to come in with the color already. I think so. Maybe put in a few more of these lines with the gray. There's a little, not a round of these here. It's really fascinating to read about the life cycle of some of these night flying insects and moths. Some of them in their adult stage um, don't even have feeding mouth parts. They're basically just in a reproductive stage, and they often, some of them only live for like 1 or 2 nights, and they fly. They try to reproduce, and then they die. Most of their life on many of these insects, most of their life is spent in their larval stage, just eating and eating and eating. They're often very advanced sensory systems to help them find a mate. One thing that is easy to forget is that biodiversity usually correlates with very low abundance. So what does that even mean? What that means is that if you're in an area that has 10 species of trees, you're more likely to find many individuals of one of those species. If you're in the same area in terms of uh, area as like how much surface area of forest in a more diverse ecosystem with 1,000 species of trees, it might be hard for you to find two of the same species. So what that means for animals is that the low abundance might mean it's really hard to find a mate. So the more different species there are in an area, the harder it will be, the harder it will be to find another individual of your same species. Therefore, sensory organs are really important. I love the little hairs here on the edge of this thing. I think I'm gonna have to give you a close up again, just for those of you who might not have gotten a screenshot earlier. So bear with me. Look away if you get nauseous easily, because I'm about to clip on the close up lens to show you some of these hairs and scales. Don't get dizzy now. Sorry, I have to line up this lens. Okay, let's get in here a little bit. See the edge of the abdomen down there? That's the part that has the hairs that I was just mentioning. Hey, it's okay. So you might know this, but butterflies and moths, the order, the taxon that they are in, the order is called Lepidoptera. And lepi means scale because they have scales on their wings. Optera means wings. So the colors that you see, and I can't zoom in while I'm live streaming much more than this, but the colors that you see right there, those are all from tiny scales. Isn't that crazy? Let's see if it'll open its wing up a little bit. See, and those surprise colors are hidden inside there. And then look at how furry it is on its back. It looks like a shag carpet. See if we can get that. Show you the eye a little bit. You can see the feet. They do have multiple segments there. See how, I mean, the legs have multiple segments. So in your drawing, um, think about that. Ooh, great idea. You want a tip from Glitter Pool Party? That's like something from a pop-up book right there. That is a great idea. That would look really cool. All right. How are you feeling about this moth? Pretty awesome, right? You ready to do color? And then remember, we got to get to these plants at some point, and that's a complex scene. We might have to simplify it. Oh, I see a euphonia, which is a really cool type of bird. Someday I'll have um, enough money to have like a camera person, and I could probably do a live stream where someone could zoom in on the different birds as they fly by, and we could nature journal them together. But right now, I don't have that type of budget for these videos because, in fact, I basically make no money from them at all. That's the sign of a true artist. A true artist, teacher, parent, or starstruck lover is you put a lot of time and effort into something, and even if you don't know you're going to get anything back. Okay, so look at that. We've got the basics in. Now let's get the color out. There's a couple colors that are super useful for moths, and one of the ones I know that I'm going to use a lot of is buff titanium and also bloodstone genuine. Look at how my watercolors are just getting really goopy because of the high humidity. That's a major problem. Certain colors, I think I'm going to probably have to replace. This is the John Rilaz palette, but some of these colors I might have to change. Like pyrrole red is especially problematic in humid environments. These are the kind of things that I'll talk about in um, that trip before that trip next year. How to prepare for nature journaling in high humidity environments and in the tropics in general. Okay, so I'm going to start with pale colors first, as usual with watercolor. and I'm going to start with this buff titanium and basically paint the whole thing with buff titanium. This gives me sort of a unifying color, and it will also be my highlights because there's not really any white. The only bad thing about buff titanium as sort of this underlying color is it is slightly opaque. So anything layered on top of it will be sort of muddy, but we don't really have very much saturated color in this moth anyways. Okay, so now I just have to let that dry. This type of a watercolor is usually called glazing when you do multiple layers on top of each other. Sometimes doing multiple layers on top of each other is too slow in the tropics because if it's high humidity, it takes way, way longer to dry, and you might not have time to do that. So sometimes you need to do it a la prima, all at once. And that's what I did for that landscape right there. So there's very little layering in that because I wanted to finish before it started raining on me and before the river flooded. So I did that basically a la prima. So there's not as much layering. And it's good to know how to do both of those techniques. One thing you can do is while that's drying, you can write some notes. So, and maybe even make a mini comic to show how this thing was moving because that that threat display or whatever you want to call it was very interesting and would be a good thing to try to show as like a comic. Um, so I'm going to start writing my notes up here because I have this space. Um, First, I'm going to write leftover moths. That's what I'm writing when it refers to ones that were from the previous night. Pick these up and you can tell the gray ink is running out on this one. They also poked me, remember? That was surprising. I think I think I hear the euphonias singing. Okay, now I know that that one's running out of gray, so I just have to get my other one. These are my favorite pins, but they're no longer being made or sold, supposedly. I'm gonna draw a surprised face here. So look how simple that is, but it does add a lot to your nature journal page. I never used to do that. See above the wing right there, that little surprise face. I think it's really important um, to include some of yourself on your page and your feelings, your reactions. We now know that reality is not objective. So pretending to be objective in your nature journal is actually less subjective than just claiming the subjectivity and embracing it. Um, and then I'm going to continue my notes down here. it had pink and other bright colors underneath. Okay, so I got some notes there, and I actually think that text, I wish it was the same darkness, but because that one was dying, it's a little bit less. I think that text adds a very important visual element to the page. It can be a unifying element. It can actually break things up. Sometimes breaking things up is what you need, and just help with the layout in general. Here, I'm going to use a Tombow pen in a similar way to kind of box these things here, and then maybe I will fill this with more stuff later. Oh, just saw another mosquito biting me. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is go back to my colors for a bit. It feels dry, barely dry. Oh, I was gonna bring the hair dryer. Whoa, I just saw another crazy moth that I didn't notice before. I might have to go check that one out. Okay, so let's add some color to this. Um, and I'm gonna use this Bloodstone Genuine. It looks brown, but it's sort of like gray, and it's very granulating. So for creating textures, it's really useful. So mostly this is a warm gray. So I'm looking at my moth, um, and there are some places that are a little bit cool gray that I'm gonna not put this color down. But if I were in a hurry, I would just do this color probably over everything. And I'm gonna do it over the entire abdomen, a little bit darker than I was hoping for. So lighten the brush and move it around. That granulating texture is going to be really helpful. Put it up here on the head, and boom. Good. Now I'm going to do the same in the wings, but I'm going to try to figure out what areas I'm going to reserve for a cooler gray. It looks like there's sort of a circle right here. Remember, a lot of times in drawing, it's all about simplifying. So you can't show the complexity of real life, and if you try, it often doesn't look as good. So it's all about, the whole game is figuring out how to simplify things, like what is essential to show and what is not essential to show. That's half of what you're doing. That's more than half of what you're doing. All right, look at that. Now, just with those two colors plus black, I feel like we've captured quite a bit of the feeling of this moth. Didn't really capture the velvetyness of the black, but that's really hard to do. Now I'm gonna wait for that to dry, and let's see if I can do a comic. This is a little bit, uh, what's the word? I'm a little bit afraid to do this. That's usually a good sign of something that you should actually try doing, especially when it comes to art and nature journaling. So I'm a little bit afraid of trying to make a comic showing the flipping thing. But remember, showing action and showing stories and showing things like that is actually one of the most important things to include in your nature journal. So I'm gonna draw like my hand uh, coming to grab it. Ah, terrible hand. Whatever. I'm gonna use gray. That makes it less scary. Okay, and then I'm going to use arrows to show the flipping and the flopping. So now it's on the other side. Maybe I can use the colors to flip, flop. Maybe I can use another arrow showing it flip back the other way. And one more arrow. Oh, that arrow came out terrible. It looks like an airplane, but that's okay. I'm gonna use color now. Flip, flop, and words. Threat display? Question mark. Flip, flop, flip, flop. So that's how simple of a comic could be. The arrows are really helpful, and now I'm gonna use color. So on these two, I'm gonna show pink. I'm just gonna do the whole thing pink. And on the other two, I'm gonna use that bloodstone genuine, just like this big one up here is. And then maybe I'll draw like a scary face or a skull. Remember, symbols, having a visual vocabulary with symbols is really helpful. A lot of times with realistic drawing and nature journaling, we're intentionally trying to get away from symbols, but symbols are actually very powerful. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. When you start learning to draw things realistically based on observation of real life, uh, what can happen is you forget how to draw symbolic things. So let's see. I know I could also draw some kind of symbol with like a cross X through it, showing like "Don't eat me," or I could do like a a box, like a text box, speech bubble. Don't eat me. And now I'm gonna draw a skull here. So I feel like that combination of symbols and miniature comic showing movement is enough to, and a little title there saying threat display. I feel like that is enough to capture that situation. Plus the little bit of the words I mentioned that it poked me. I said the word surprise. I showed my surprised face. That's enough. But seriously, this is the part that people often don't do. It's really easy just to draw the portrait of that moth. Draw a portrait and then nothing else on your page. That is kind of nature journaling, but there's nature journaling is about capturing information, asking questions, and thinking on paper. And um, if I didn't put anything about that experience of it flipping and flopping, that would be a major omission. That would not be objective at all. That would be losing the most important part of the plot. So try to think of ways that you can incorporate these other things, even if it feels scary. I was nervous about doing this part, but I'm so glad that I did it because it might end up being the most important part of the story. Otherwise, this could have just been something I drew from like a photo online. All right, now I'm going to come back in and get some of these other colors. There's orange on the top. There's two little orange dots, which are like some of the only color on the top. So I'm going to be sure to get that part. There's a teeny bit, a suggestion of color in here. And that was too red and too saturated. So I'm just going to lift a little bit off. lift a little bit of color off with a clean brush. Same up here. Lift a little bit of that off. Lift a little bit of it off. Wipe it on the thing. Lift a little bit of it off. And good. So look at that very subtle color spots there. Now I'm ready to put in that cool gray. I'm going to use shadow violet with a little bit of extra blue or something. Oh my gosh, look at the moth cloth is getting blown in the wind back there, and there's still one other moth on there that I really want to nature journal. Oh, here comes the wind, look. See, there's a moth right there on the other side. That's actually super cool, right where I'm pointing. Really want to get to that one. It's hanging on there. I mean, if you think about it, these animals have to go through it was pouring rain, torrential rain last night, and the ones that aren't under the roof, they have to find somewhere out there in the forest to spend the night. It's kind of crazy. So it's not contrasty enough, so I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to this gray. Probably too much. It's way too blue. Okay, there, that's better. And there we've got a little bit of that contrasty. It 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 doesn't look like it doesn't look quite right, but I tried to get a cooler gray to contrast with the warmer gray. Not gonna worry about it too much now. What I do know I need to do is I have some value um, variations here on that moth, and so with the original warm gray, I'm gonna get a little bit darker and come in and get some of these lines and stuff. So, for example, these lines here, okay, that's almost too strong. It's looking too strong. Whoa. Okay, now you can see how we're coming in, we're adding some details in darker areas. Getting values right is actually more important than getting colors or hues right. We often don't think about it, but it's more important than color. Also remember what I said, surface textures can often take away from the volumetric aspect of the drawing. So you have to be careful not getting too crazy with textures. It also takes away from the overall shape of the thing. And you can easily lose yourself and um, kind of mess things up. This needs to be darker up here, and then the eyes are going to be darker also. Probably overall the wings are going to be paler than they should be, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. You can definitely see it is paler than the real life. I'm just going to add some color like that. Okay, now I'm just gonna let that dry, and then I'm gonna draw the darkness of the eyes and call it good. I can't tell if the eyes are completely black. Wow, you are so amazing. Thank you so much. Wow, what an incredible creature. Oh gosh, I love you. Wow. Wow, it even has this. Oh wow, I can see the spines on its legs. No wonder I got poked. It has these massive spines on the legs. Oh my gosh. That is crazy. It doesn't show up in this perspective, but I'm gonna have to draw that because that is so crazy. Let me see if I can get the camera in there for you to see. Look at these spines. I guess they're tibial spines. I know the light's not really good in there. Can you see those spines coming off? Let's see if the we can do it with the close focus. I mean the macro. Okay, do you see oh my gosh, look at those spines. Do you see those? No wonder I was getting poked. That is crazy. Okay, so not only does it have bright colors underneath, it has it has spikes, and it has two spikes um, per leg. So it's got six legs. Actually, the front legs look like they don't have them, but those two back legs do. Wow, so that's eight spikes down there. That is so cool. Oh my gosh. So that's the kind of thing that I would not have noticed if I had not nature journaled this thing. I've taken photos of these already. I've loaded them onto my iNaturalist as an observation. Funny word, observation. But by nature journaling it and by trying to touch it, so yes, I did try to touch it, and you can go into ethical discussions about that and disturbing nature and whatnot. But if I had not done those two things, nature journaling it and actually like touching it and being curious about it, I wouldn't have learned about those spikes. So by entering into this type of relationship with it, I've learned more about it, and I will appreciate this animal so much more because of that. So let me just get over. I'm going to do it over here, a close up on the leg. It's got this weird white knee. Oh, is this the one that doesn't have? One has gray and one has black. That's really annoying. So those two, both of those back legs. So since I'm doing all of my tax in gray, I'm gonna stick with that for now. And I'm gonna write spikes. James, I have seen not a ton of balsas. Oh, here comes the wren. Hopefully this doesn't affect the sound. I'm gonna plug in my phone so it doesn't run out of batteries. Um, there are some balsas. I don't think this is really there in more disturbed areas in the cloud forest. You'll see them like along roadsides a little bit, but there's not a ton. I have not seen a ton of balsa. I did see some on my trip from Quito to Mindo along the way, but not a ton. Okay, so I captured that, and that's an example of sort of following your curiosity. which is really important. And these little discoveries that you make while you're nature journaling or drawing something, that is a really great way to nature journal. So don't forget to actually include that stuff on your page. That's the sort of childlike discovery. I'm going to actually just write childlike wonder here. So I'm going to take a drink of water and I'm going to start getting ready for the next stage, which is probably going to be drawing this plant setup right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. Some of you might be rearing to go to sketch and nature journal this plant setup. So let me get you positioned for that. Look at all the bugs on the ground. The hotel staff is not going to be super stoked about the mess that I'm making here, bringing all this life and biology into here. But let's set this up in a way where you can do a fun arrangement. Obviously, you don't have to draw the white and yellow banister, but hopefully you'll be able to kind of visually isolate these branches. Let's see if I can move it back a little bit. Visually isolate these branches and all this epiphytic stuff, because this is really what the cloud forest looks like. Actually, maybe a little bit of height would be better. Let's see if I can get you back up onto here. Tripod had some issues breaking yesterday. I think this is actually a little bit better. It's still a little bit weird. I wish I could isolate it a little bit more visually, but we're gonna have to work with that. So you can see here, we've got some ferns there. Like if I could put the screen behind it, but it would probably blow in the wind. We've got these ferns, these epiphytic ferns here. We've got Bromeliad there, all these mosses, the different branches, orchids right there. It's a little bit confusing because there are plants in the background. These orchids right here, another Bromeliad, mosses and stuff coming off, and this other different type of Bromeliad growing there. So you can start sketching that. I'm going to drink some water and start getting ready for this next stage, but feel free to start nature journaling that. Hola José, ¿qué tal? José encontró una polilla en su aula. Genial, genial. Quiero ver cómo parece. Aquí hay un montón. Estoy en Mindo, Ecuador. Me encantan las polillas. Aquí dicen mariposas a todo eso. Jose is nature journaling down in Argentina, Patagonia. So different opposite seasonality there going into spring, I believe. All right, I'm gonna try something real quick. Let me know if this helps. I'm gonna see if I can put the oh, también José, en mi Instagram tengo un montón más de mis fotos de las polillas que he encontrado. Okay, so let's see if we can move this. Might be a bad idea. Famous last words, right? So take that light down. And let's go. If I had some tape, like gaffer's tape, that could really help here. It's almost like creating a photo shoot for you. Please don't knock over everything. Please don't knock over everything. It was hard to arrange these branches correctly. And let's see. If I had some tape, then I could tie it down below somehow, because I'm afraid the wind is going to come in and move it all around. So it isolates it visually a little bit, which will make it way easier to draw. I don't have tape, do I? I don't have push pins. I don't have any of the things that I normally would have if I were more sedentary in a location. But see, look, see how you can see the fern leaves way better already? That's going to make it so much easier for you to draw. I need more of these rubber bands. Okay, So I know it doesn't look amazing, but see what we can do now is we can get a drawing where you can get these branches and you can get this gestalt, because what you need to be able to do is not worry too much about the details, to be able to capture this feeling of the cloud forest where there's like these branches dripping with mosses, and even just the silhouette of them is super cool. Hey, what's going on with my, oh, that's the broken one. Gotta rotate this around the silly tripod that broke yesterday. And I have to go to the bathroom. Okay, so you're gonna be able to start drawing this scene right here, um, if you know what I mean. What I recommend is starting over here and going to here, getting these little bits of these branches, and see if you can kind of think about it almost as a silhouette at first. And I'll show you the example that I started the other day. Here's an example, see? But you need to be able to isolate it and see these edges. That's why I put the white behind it, because you can see the edges like here, for example. So go ahead and start on that. And I'm gonna, whoops, let me just mute. Okay, I'm back. All right, so I'm gonna start diving right into it, but like I said, what you might want to do is you're gonna have to somehow figure out how to simplify these things. Like, for example, you might not include everything. Also, we're not gonna spend 3 hours. You could spend 3 days drawing and painting something like this, which would be a fun thing to do at some point, but not right now, unless you take a screenshot and really want to do that. There's even some moths in here. I don't know if you've noticed moths mixed in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify. So, for example, like if there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fern fronds here, I'm not going to draw all of them. I'm just going to draw like the most essential ones. Like, for example, this one right here looks really beautiful. I wish it were overlapping slightly differently. I might not even draw all of the orchids and bromeliads. Like, I might not draw this one, but I'm definitely going to draw this one on the edge. You don't have to draw all the branches, but this kind of thing is a low hanging fruit. Those are really easy to draw. That might be able to be done with like one brush stroke, for example. So let's start doing it. I'm going to keep the camera on here, so you're not going to be able to see me drawing the whole time, but every once in a while I'll put my drawing up. Also, another huge tip is to keep it small. So, for example, doing a whole page like this was multiple hours and multiple cappuccinos to draw just that amount. For right now, I'm going to do something that'll probably take up that much space. And also notice that this is a long composition. So think about how that could fit with your other elements. Luckily, I have a long space here. I could even, if I want to, squeeze in like a thumbnail here and just do it in black. That might be a good warm up. Or if you don't want to if this feels intimidating, give yourself a really small space and see if you can fit it into that small space. Ink would be a good option for this, especially if you're trying to go faster than you normally work. Okay. Oh, I wish I had another coffee. All right, let's go. Just think all of this before breakfast. So I'm gonna get a nice flowy pin for this. Um, which one has more black ink? Oh shoot, I forgot about that extra moth that I was interested in. I must still be on the other side of the other side of the curtain. So just for practice, I'm gonna do like a 2 minute fast one and try to shrink it into that small place. Being able to control the size of your drawings is like a superpower. A lot of times we don't control the size of our drawings and just default to drawing things always the same size, and we don't even know we're doing it. What are the major shapes that suggest what's going on here without getting into details? Like, what are those things you really need to get, and what can you skip? This feeling of gravity or like sort of dripping things, things sort of hanging things, draping is really important. So any objects that are sort of hanging vertically are important to capture those to get this feeling. Because this cloud forest vegetation has this certain feeling, and I think one of the main things is complexity, but also this sort of like hanging, dangling, dripping with mosses and all kinds of things, vines hanging down, and that requires vertical elements. There's gravity there. So I also want to point out this is something that I've practiced a lot before. I've nature journaled and been fascinated by the aesthetic of this type of ecosystem. For I've spent hundreds of hours um, looking at this kind of stuff. So if um, keep that in mind when you see what I draw. It's not easy. It's challenging. I mean, even just drawing branching patterns is hard, but it's something that the more you do it, the more you start to develop conceptual and visual shorthand for what these things look like and how you can simulate them on paper. One person who is in my top three favorite artists is Bill Watterson. He did the Calvin and Hobbes comics, and if you ever go to a library or something or look online at some Calvin and Hobbes comics, you'll realize that he was a master of depicting vegetation. And it's kind of surprising. Some people might be like surprised that he's one of my top three favorite artists, if not my all time favorite artist. And one of the reasons is because of the way he's able to show vegetation with a few simple lines. Wow, there's a massive ant down there. Okay, so here's my very quick one. You can see it up here. This is the kind of thing I recommend trying to do. Push yourself to do a quick one if you can, and you can always do a more in-depth one later. I'm gonna do a more in-depth one down here now, but I'm first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a frame for it. And I'm still not going to get too crazy with it. If this is feeling too hard or too challenging, one thing you can do is just bounce around and draw individual small things. So for example, you could just separate things out. Oh, there's that one really cool moth too. That really colorful one. Wow. So you could, for example, just focus on this or just focus on that and just sort of bounce around. And that's what I do when I notice my attention span flagging or my energy level being low is I don't tackle the whole thing. Same with animals. I do the same thing with animals. So just to show what that would look like, or if you're really afraid, you could also use gray and just do those small things here in gray. So let me show you what that would look like. I'm going to get the one that I know has gray. Ah, the wind. Oh, I never did the eye black. Forgot about that. Okay, so for example, here's one plant that looks different than the rest. I'm going to draw that quickly. So this will be almost like a collection. It has opposite leaves. They're very succulent. I don't even know what family it is in. Boom, got that one. Next, I'm going to do that orchid right there. It's not flowering right now. I think Ecuador has more orchids than like any other country in the world. Colombia might be up there as well. More orchid species, that is. The stems are kind of long, so I need to make sure I show that. It's not the flowering season, but you can come on a whole orchid tour of Ecuador. And there's so many different climatic zones that they're flowering. Different zones have different flowering times, but this doesn't seem to be the main flowering time for the Choco Andino where I am. Okay, so I got one. I'm gonna even put numbers next to them. One, two. See how this is taking the pressure off of it? I got my second one there, that orchid. Now I'm going to draw the pokey bromeliad back there. There's a lot of opportunity to practice foreshortening and overlap with bromeliads. One of my Patreon patrons just posted some really cool nature journal pages she did based on some photos I shared of a bromeliad down here. And she did a really good job of showing the foreshortening, which is really hard. And I didn't do it at all in this drawing. Didn't really show the foreshortening, but I'm just trying to go quickly and show. Maybe I'll extend these a little bit. Oh, one of the big moths just flew away. I could see the red underneath when it flew. That was really cool. Okay, got that one. What should I do next? Let me get this fern over here. First, I'm going to show the fronds that are just unfurling. Those are the funnest and easiest to draw. Ferns can be a real pain in the butt to draw because they have a lot of geometric regularity. Anything that's very regular in its pattern is going to be harder to draw because you have to match that, and the human eye knows when something doesn't match a pattern. Even someone who doesn't know anything about ferns will tell that it just won't look right. So there's certain tricks you can use to help get those patterns right or to suggest them, and there's certain things you can fudge and certain things you can't fudge. So there, that was pretty quick. I got kind of lucky with that. So this is another approach. This is one approach to do it like a scene can be really fun. It could be big, it doesn't have to be small. Doing it like a collection is another approach. This is often the one I would suggest and I would lean towards. Now I'm going to draw this plant here. It seems like it's a vine, but it could also be like, there's another term for these like shingling plants, I think. It's basically attached right onto the other plant and just goes along its length, sort of strapped onto the branch. So I'm going to write that down because it's hard to show in the drawing. And I'm going to use the word strapped in quotations, strapped to the branch. These are all epiphytes. So this is like an epiphyte collection. And I'm actually going to just write that here in slightly bigger words. Oh, I'm craving another coffee. Okay, and then a little bit of moss. We got to show some of this moss. There's probably um, more than just moss. I see some things that look like liverworts on here, and this might be a selaginella or something. And there's probably multiple types of moss. Oh, here's the liverwort, and there's some lichens as well. There's a lot of different things going on here. You can see why the biodiversity is so high in this area. Even just one branch can have so much life on it. Okay, now I'm going to show some of just this the dangly moss, I think, is what I'm going to try to show. It looks like it has a little bit of a branching pattern. Mosses are non-vascular, so that means that they don't have specialized tissues for transporting water and nutrients the way that like trees, for example, and bigger plants have. Um, and so that's really trippy to think about. Um, 6, moss. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for that. If you want to go crazy with this, you can just take a screenshot because we're going to move here in a second. If you want to do a really in-depth one, feel free to pause the video, pause the live, or you can take a screenshot and come back to it later because we're about to move and do one quick. I think we're going to try to do one quick little landscape like this off the edge of the balcony. As long as I can figure out a way to rig up my tripod. And I'm going to use my Tombow pin here to create a little bit of structure on the page. So, see, whoa, lid fell off. That would have been bad if I was in the canopy. So I got the epiphyte collection there, and I'm just going to create a line to separate this here. Get that layout going. I really like these pale Tombow pins for that. You can barely see it, but it creates a better layout. And then I'll create a smaller frame in here, probably about that size. Maybe I'll do it here. It's really hard to draw and paint in the bottom part of the page, but I think this would really balance out that one. So let's get ready to go do that. For anyone just joining, there's a bunch of moths at the beginning of this video. Cloud forest moths from the Choco Andino, one of the most biodiverse and also most endangered ecosystems on the entire planet. Then I created this sort of situation here, simulating a cloud forest branch with a bunch of epiphytes growing on it. Look, there's even epiphytes growing on other epiphytes on here. You can always go back and take a screenshot or pause the video if you really want to get in depth. This is meant to be like a virtual nature journaling adventure. You can join me and experience what it would be like to be in the cloud forest and depict some of these things that are really essential to the cloud forest. And this kind of look right here, oh, there's a peperomia. That's a really cool, another one that I didn't include. These are some strategies that I'm sharing with you and some of the main things that you would see in a cloud forest that you would want to be able to nature journal. So we're going to leave these moths behind. This is the one that stabbed me with its leg spines that we just learned about together. Look at that red underneath it. I don't know if you can see that right now, but this thing, oh, sorry, buddy. Oh, look at the pink under wings. Oh my gosh, it's doing the hopping thing again. Let's put it up on that plant there. It's okay, it's okay. Wow, look at that. That is so amazing. So feel free to make a nature comic showing that. Look at that underwing color. That is incredible. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So we did that. Look at all of the bugs that just come at night. It's crazy. You can see why here people, when I told people that I'm intentionally attracting bugs, they're like, you're crazy. People here, just think you're at home at night. If you don't have good screens and you're cooking or something, all of those bugs would be flying into your house, and you can see how that would be annoying. So bear with me as I get this camera set up. We're going to go take a look at the awesome view that we have from here. And I'm going to try to set this up so that we can do a landscape drawing together. And I think I have an idea for how to make my tripod work in the meantime. This is very experimental live show and more complex than what I usually do. But I wanted to take you along to the cloud forest with me. So get all my supplies ready, my watercolor, and I think that my computer will receive the signal from the camera and that this will work. Get my journal, my kit. Okay, let's do this. So, actually move the computer a little closer. Whoa, whoa. Okay, so this is where we want to go. Just around the corner here. Check this out. Amazing, right? So, I'm actually going to switch cameras here so you can see me trying to set this up. So this is really crazy to try to do as a live, especially since my tripod's broken. Got a MacGyver something here with a rubber band. See if that will work. Oh yeah, kind of works. Great. Okay, so now we just need to get out on this narrow balcony and do a landscape painting. of this cloud forest scene. Are you ready? Check out this river. It's raging because it was raining all last night. If the sound of the river in the audio is too distracting, just turn down the volume on your audio. Okay, I don't want to put my computer up on this ledge. All right, now let me just squeeze into here. Whoa. This is the weirdest live. Actually, I've done crazy. I think I did a 5 hour long one where I indexed over 50 nature journals or something. Okay, so let's get a better perspective because right now, I don't know if some of you have probably taken my really in depth landscape painting class. Oh, I kind of want my computer closer, but I'm afraid of putting it on this ledge. It's dangerous. Let me grab a computer real quick. Okay, some of you have probably taken my in-depth class on Skillshare where I do talk a lot about choice of landscapes. And right now, what you can see sucks. So, choosing a good framing and a good subject is the most important part. So, like for example, see how now you got the skyline? That's way better. It's still not perfect. So let's try to find something and frame something a little bit better because that's actually the easiest way to make a better painting before it's true of all drawing, but especially with landscapes before you even get started. So, you can do the thing where you go like this and you try to frame it. What we want overlapping elements. So ideally we would have clear overlaps between our different things. Right now with the edge of the mountain, you have a clear overlap between the mountain and the sky, which is helpful. This gutter for the roof is annoying, but we're going to work with it. Maybe I can move this down just a little bit. Other things that provide good overlap can be trees. So for example, there's this tree right here in the foreground, and there's some trees down here in front of the water. So let's just see what we can do. We're going to do something really simple because it's not a great subject. If you know what is a good subject and what is a not good subject, you can make better decisions and you can make better landscapes. I'm not going to go super in depth right now um, because I want to go make a coffee, but and also because I have a whole video all that goes way. I have multiple videos that go more in depth and a whole Skillshare class about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my clip here. I'm going to clip my page because I'm also going to be working in the most difficult part. So you have to hold it in a really awkward way because I'm going to be drawing down here. So I'm going to start with gray. This was also a not great choice of subject. So there were a lot of things working against me in this one. But if you know how to simplify it right, you can still make it work, even if you don't have a great subject. But the first step is knowing what are the elements that make a good subject and what are things that are going to be tricky. So, like I said, I already mentioned the overlap is really important. This is the one where the gray is running out. And that's annoying. Ah, I need to find the right pin in a pocket full of pins. Here we go. So there are tools that you can use besides just using your hand for this. I bought this thing that I haven't even used yet. You can also make your own. Let's see, you can hold up something like this and frame it. and figure out what you're going to include and what you're not going to include. The closer it is to your eye, the more it will include. So like this, for example, so you could just cut off a small segment, like maybe that, you get some tree, get some mountain, get some foreground, but look, there's not even any river in that. Any way that we include the river, it's going to be harder to get the sky. So let's see if we could, um, we'd have to get really close there. And the more you include, the more you have to draw, the harder it is. It's always easier to pick something smaller. And this would probably tell you, okay, maybe this is actually not a good place to do a landscape. But what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of the sloppy, quick and sloppy way that I'm going to show you right now to just kind of get the overall idea. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of that mountain ridge line in the background here, and I'm going to do it with gray because I want to suggest that it's far away, and gray can do that. Keep it really small. I got my second ridge line coming through here. There's a little house up there and a bunch of bamboo that I can see. And then I want some trees in the foreground, but I'm going to do the trees in black because I want them to stand out more. I'm not going to give away all my secrets because I do have, like I said, a class about this. Trying to make a living doing this, not just give away all my secrets for free. Oh, and unfortunately, this is the pin where the block doesn't work. Wonderful. Okay, so now let's get this tree in here. I'm going to keep it pretty simple, but show some branches, bare branches, show some bromeliads growing on the branches. Basically like what we were just looking at. Keeping it relatively simple and kind of turning into more of a cartoon than what's really going on here. I'm simplifying reality and exaggerating certain things. Let's get another bromeliad, a big bromeliad there, and some foreground plants with weird leaves. Okay, and then there's going to be some foreground plants right here with more details. Okay, now I need to get this creek or river, which is going to be probably one of the hardest parts technically. I'll get some foreground plants here actually. This one has weird flower stalks coming off of it. So I might even draw almost the way I would draw blind contour for this. So like very, very loose type drawings like a blind contour for some of this, especially because I'm going fast. Now, the main thing I want with that creek or river is to suggest this directionality of it. See how it's making this sort of wedge where it gets skinnier up that way and it looks like it's going away. I want to use this river the same way I would use a road or a path. I want to use it to suggest depth. That's what makes a landscape painting interesting usually. Maybe I'll put one more foreground tree. Don't want to get too many elements here. Probably already messed it up. And then I'm going to do the river. So I want to create this illusion of depth by showing it. It also creates movement in the piece. There's this island because the river split into two last night in the torrential downpour. It's actually coming around that. And this pin seems to be dying as well, fortunately. Very annoying. But I'm just going to work with it, even though this pin is starting to poop out on me. Now I'm getting in these on the opposite bank. So you can see this line here, that's linear perspective. A lot of people don't think linear perspective applies to a completely natural environment. They think linear perspective is only in human-made structures, but that's not true. Linear perspective is part of nature and it's everywhere. This aspect of linear perspective using the river is going to suggest depth. Ooh, I just noticed a dung beetle on the ground that I kind of want a nature journal instead of this. Um, so I got those two lines receding into the distance where the creek is, the rushing river, and those are going to help give this feeling of depth. Another one where linear perspective comes in is on rocks. See where the bottom of the rock is round like that? That is actually partly that is a part of linear perspective. So I'm going to get the vegetation on the opposite bank, and this is the vegetation that's in front of, way in front of that other tree line. So I want a little bit of overlap there, for example, and a little bit of overlap here over everything with like some branches. So some of this I'm just totally making up and don't actually see it in the picture. See it in the real world. See this? Oh, see this tree right here, overlapping those three other elements or those two other hills. That also gives the sense of depth. Okay, now that I got that, I am going to do a little bit of black and then I'm going to go straight to watercolor. So I'm going to black in. I'm not going to do black in the background, even though some great artists such as Mark Simmons have said, watch me poo-poo on atmospheric perspective or something like that. And then he puts a bunch of black into the background. That can work, but it's good to know the rules before you break them. I think he actually said something more like, I laugh in the face of atmospheric perspective. And a little bit here. You can see my pen is dying. Okay, see that black? Black is important. All right, watercolor time, baby. Let me drink some water. Okay, this is going to be way harder to hold and show to you at the same time, but let's see if I can do it. Yes, I can see the bacterial film developing in my watercolor brush. That is essential for regulating the flow. When these are brand new, the flow is exuberant and over the top. As they age, you get a bacterial film growing in there, it regulates the flow. And then you can have old ones and new ones with different flow rates. That's why this has red on it. It's a slower flow. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, the sky is not really blue. Um, is it? No, I don't think so. So I'm not going to make it blue, unfortunately. Unfortunately, that would be really easy. And I think also, unfortunately, it's going to be hard to show. Let's see, maybe I can do it this way. There we go. All right, so I'm going to actually get a gray, but really pale. It's hard to make the sky pale enough. Blue is a very dark color. Usually, they're very strong pigments, very dark, very easy to make them dark. And people always want to make the sky blue. And the sky always ends up being too dark. But the sky needs to be the lightest element. It doesn't even matter what color it is, really. What matters is it's the lightest element. And I'm also going to paint that same color that I use in the sky down over my background so that there's a unifying color. Now it's still a little bit wet. That's even though I said so much about keeping it pale, I made it too dark. I could use my, oops, it's too late. I tried to use my cloth to lift a little bit, like for clouds, but I wasn't able to. It was already Maybe it was a staining color, and so I wasn't able to lift it. No worries. Now, oftentimes what I do is I'll put that same color from the sky into the water. The water is often reflecting the sky. In this case, the water is totally brown. So I'm going to wait, but the water is oftentimes your second palest color. My second palest color is going to be these tree trunks. A lot of cloud forest and rainforest tree trunks are pale color for some reason. So I'm going to take a little bit of buff titanium and put it on the tree trunks. Because remember, with watercolor, we're usually going from light to dark. So let's just get a little bit of that color in here. A little bit more. And next lightest is I'm probably going to do some really pale bromeliads, like bright green, yellow. So I mix up this green, yellow, and especially this great big one here, and maybe this one up in the tree. They sometimes have red on them too, like napamide maroon. I'll keep those like that as little highlights. See that color there? Now that my sky is dry, I'm gonna get that furthest hill. I'm gonna make it a blue-green color. I'm gonna use ultramarine blue and chromium oxide, but I'm gonna keep it pale. The further away things are, the paler they are. That's atmospheric perspective. So especially if you want to suggest sort of a cloud forest situation, you can make it even paler. It should be quite a bit darker than the sky. So this is the tricky balancing act with this. It should be quite a bit darker in contrast with the sky. But if it's pale, it gives people the sense that, oh, that's far away. See that? I'm going to try to just leave it right there and not fiddle with it because we're trying to make this happen quick. Now, ideally, I would just keep moving forward and forward, but I want to give that a second to dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get the color of these heliconias, one foreground plant there, and this other foreground plant. So I'm going to use this serpentine genuine. I want a pretty saturated, contrasty foreground. So I'm going to go straight from the pigment because it's actually not a very dark pigment. And I'm going to get this vegetation here in the foreground. Fortunately, it kind of looks the same as what I used for the bromeliad, but you can only have so many colors and so many values in a painting. You have to simplify. I also have contrast in the foreground, which is another element of atmospheric perspective. Next, I feel like this is dry enough to put in my next closer element. So I'm actually going to use the chromium oxide again with a little bit of that ultramarine blue, but make it a little bit darker and hit up all of this a little bit darker still. This is like the mid ground. Oh, actually, that's not it. See how that one's just a little bit darker than the one behind it. It's working. It's working. And my hand is cramping. Working on the bottom of the page is the hardest part. Um, it takes practice, and also the way I'm holding it is unnatural because I'm trying to make it show for the camera. Let's have a beetle intermission. Look at this beetle. Oh, it's like a June bug type beetle. Unfortunately, this one looks like it's dead. Would be really fun to draw. The color's not that amazing, but there's your little beetle break. Look at the legs on that thing. I love arthropods. They're so interesting. Here you can see the elytra and a little bit of the wings peeking out there. Okay, next. Not quite the foreground, but the other side of the river. We're gonna go with let's see. I think we're just gonna go with chromium oxide and just make it darker. There's flies landing in my watercolor. The nice thing about the cloud forest is there's a lot of bugs, but it's not quite like the lowland tropical forests or the Amazon, for example. There's way fewer biting insects here, and it's a lot cooler. So, like, the mosquitoes aren't even that bad here. Okay, now I'm going to go into this and almost straight from the pigment, chromium oxide, so quite a bit darker. I'm going to paint around that heliconia because I would like to give it individual color. When doing landscapes, one of the things you have to balance is you don't really want to show 100 different types of green, even though there might be each plant has a slightly different green. If you start painting the exact color of each plant, you lose the blocks, the hierarchy. And for a landscape, you really need a hierarchy of shapes. Hierarchy doesn't sound fun, especially when you think you're doing art, but hierarchy is actually one of the most important aspects of art. And I think I'm just going to use the chromium oxide for these trees as well. So, like this tree, and this tree, just to keep it simple, follow my own advice. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Sort of running out of greens. I don't want to have way too many greens in this. Excuse me. Uh oh. Okay. Next might be the creek, the river. Actually, let me get a little bit of a blue green for the heliconia. Almost turquoise. Don't want it to be too turquoise though. Okay, got this a little bit weird color mix. You have to be selective about where you're going to use weird colors. It's not a highlight if half of your painting is that color. It's not special if half of your painting is that color. Color is a relationship. A lot of people don't realize that, but color is always a relationship. Color separate from everything else. is almost meaningless. So it's always about what this color looks like compared to the colors around it. The colors around it will change that color greatly. So I'm going to start with the brown river now. Painting water that's not blue is always tricky because the human mind is constantly wanting water to look blue. But I'm just going to go in here with this Monte Amiata Natural Sienna and paint a bunch of brown. And this could totally ruin the landscape right here. I have one other trick up my sleeve for making it look like water, which may or may not work. In which case, it might just look like a road with a bunch of huge boulders in it. I'm going to make some parts of it darker than others. That's really important. If you study fluid dynamics for decades, like Leonardo da Vinci, uh, you might have more luck. Otherwise, just randomly paint dark places in some areas. And if you want, make them look like lines going in the direction of the flow to suggest movement. Big brown river. Whew. Even though it's clearing up a lot, it suggests a relatively healthy watershed if after a big storm event, the, the, the flow doesn't fluctuate too much and the sediment load doesn't fluctuate too much, or it gets back to a baseline very quickly. That suggests a healthy watershed. Okay, now I've got a few more greens to put in here and one last trick on the water and some gray for the boulders. So now I'm going to get my most saturated green for some of this vegetation that's disturbance adapted next to the river. And it's also close. Oh no, I just stepped on the dung beetle. Sorry. Whoa, also noticed a really cool turquoise colored beetle. Nature is so distracting. Okay, let me get this highlighter phthalo yellow green into this disturbance vegetation areas on the edge here. This is the color I want to be less than 25% of my painting. That looks like it's getting close to 15 or 20%. See that highlighter green? Ah, it's working. See, our atmospheric perspective, our rules of landscape painting are working. Even though this is kind of not the best subject, like I told you from the beginning, knowing some of those principles and applying them can make the landscape work. And that Skillshare video, like I said, if I were closer to the computer, I could put the link up for you. If you just search for me on Skillshare, you can find it too. But in that class, I go super into depth on this topic. All right, I'm going to use a cool color for the boulders since the water is a warm color. So that means shadow violet. A cool gray instead of a warm gray, which I would often use for these boulders. So there's a bunch of boulders in the middle, like an island. Last night I got woken up by these boulders, these grandfathers and grandmothers getting thrown, bumped, crashed downstream, and they were just massive boulders crashing against each other. I could feel in my bones as I was trying to sleep with my earplugs in last night. Water is so powerful. You just think these boulders came from the Andes. These boulders came out of the Andes Mountains. They've been moving, they got moved up as the mountains moved up, and now they're moving over thousands of years. They're moving little by little downstream, bashing against each other, making smaller rocks, getting rounded. They're so rounded here. So that one sort of island just looks like a gray turd in the middle of the river, unfortunately. But just gonna have to roll with it. Now I just need to paint that tree there, and I'm almost done. So I'm just gonna use the serpentine genuine again. I hear some kind of bird over here. Hello, who are you? Serpentine genuine. Boom. We are basically done. Let me clean my brush real quick. Ooh, there's a cool wasp or reproductive ant on the ground. Oh no, and there's the dung beetle sort of writhing. Okay, so check it out. We did it. By following some of the principles of landscape painting, we were actually able to create a landscape that somewhat represents this huge mess of green in a way that suggests depth. It would have been really easy to do a landscape of this situation, this green mess, in a way that does not show depth. It could have just looked like a big flat or a mosaic. And it's fine to do that, especially if you're an impressionist and you're going against depth, and that's the whole point. But in this case, we want to create the sense of depth. We want to create the sense that someone has that feeling like that they can walk into this. Now we've captured this. We captured these plants. We did those moths earlier, and now I just need to do some writing right here, and this will be a wonderful cloud forest page. I hope you put some cool cloud forest stuff in your journal, or you just enjoyed spending part of your morning in the cloud forest with me. This was a challenging live to do. I've never done one quite like this before. And I just wanted to share some of the cloud forest with you because I'm enjoying it so much, and having such a great time. If you got something out of this video, this live, consider using the super chat. There's a little button down there on YouTube. It's called super chat or super thanks, where you can give me even just $2, because there's a lot of work to make these episodes. I do it because I love it, but I also want to make a living and be able to make enough money to get like health insurance, things like that. Maybe eventually uh, make money to actually live in a less homeless and nomadic way than it have been for the last year, as I've dedicated everything to the Nature Journal show. So consider tapping one of those buttons down there, or you can support me on Patreon, where you also get special access to a bunch of cool things, a bunch of behind the scenes stuff like that. So check me out on patreon.com/Marley Peifer. New episode coming next Wednesday. I think it's already scheduled. Nature journaling in a pond. It's going to be really funny, and it's slightly extreme. So check it out then, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. Bye.